So one of the things that I think is fascinating about all of what we're talking about here is that it's not just about gender and sex and sexuality, but this is also leaking into all sorts of other things, talking about ethnicity and color of skin and all of that. You've written a bit about this.
I have, yeah. I wrote about how university applications, and particularly Harvard, has been discriminating against Asians for decades, and how, to the point where Asians, when they apply to university, will want to hide their ethnicity in hopes of that's going to give them a fair chance of actually getting into the school.
Yeah, so all right, so somebody that's watching this right now that doesn't know about this, they're going to go, wait a minute, why would Harvard discriminate against Asian people?
Because apparently there are too many Asians there. If it's based solely on SAT scores and meritocracy, there's a very high proportion of Asian students, and so in the name of quote-unquote diversity and inclusion, Asian students get penalized.
So this to me is the most blatant example of why this diversity stuff is complete nonsense, because people on face value, it seems nice. We want to help people. Mm-hmm. We want to help groups that maybe have struggled more or for whatever reason.
And I think we should.
And there's probably many good ways to do that, maybe investing in more education or whatever else. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that. But what they take as a good thought, then they don't think all the way through, which means, okay, now we're going to have to punish people who have worked very hard and done everything right. And by and large, the Asian community, whether it's Chinese or Japanese or Korean or whatever else, have worked really hard and put a focus on education and family. And then what is the result of that? It's now harder, if not almost impossible at some level, to get into Harvard. Mm-hmm.
And the craziest thing, I don't understand why people think this is acceptable. And even when I wrote that column, I had a number of Asians reach out to me and say, you know, don't be used as a token for the far right, and I'm totally okay with this. This is fair. And I'm thinking, you know, what are you on? Like,
didn't the Times do an op-ed, I think, by an Asian woman, if I'm not mistaken?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, saying that this is okay. And I mean,
what do you do with that? What do you do with that? You are fighting for true equality.
Yeah.
And that is simply not what they're fighting for.
I think it's indoctrination at some level. I think especially for the kids who are applying to these schools and who are okay with having to score much higher on the SAT in order to get a fair chance. I think they've just been told, you know, this is how it has to be. But this idea that it should be an equality of outcome as opposed to opportunity is silly, and it doesn't actually deal with actual differences in terms of opportunity. You know, in terms of the differences that we see and the reasons why there are these differences, they're not actually being addressed.
Please tell me that you got some nice support from members of the Asian community for this, and it wasn't just sort of brainwashed lefties that were.
No, I did, and I got it across the board of you know, many races. So I was grateful for that because I wasn't sure how people were going to respond to that piece, but I felt very strongly that I had to say something.
Has Harvard issued a response to any of this, or do we even know where they're at with all this?
No, as far as I know, the lawsuit is still ongoing.
Yeah, it really is just crazy. So are you with me on this? I sense that there's some massive minority groups that are breaking right now. I think the Asian community, because of this, I hate saying community, but you know, you have to use some words to describe some of this. But I think the black community is breaking. This is what a lot of what Candace Owens is talking about. I sense this happening in the gay community. I sense this happening in the Jewish community very similarly because of the Asian community, because of hard work and education and all that. And so then we decide, we have to put you at the bottom of the oppression Olympics. So there's an interesting, like, strange alliance now building up. Are you seeing that?
I would say, yeah, I see it coming. I see, well, we were talking a bit about this earlier, about how the left is going to eat its own until there is only one person left. So it's only a matter of time, really. Yeah. We're all going to find each other and say, yeah, we've had enough of this. I mean, gay men, you guys don't count, it doesn't count to be gay anymore. So.
Yeah. And I never wanted extra credit. I wanted equality.
Equality.
I wanted equal credit, not extra credit.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, I'm actually okay being thrown out in that regard of this pyramid because I don't want to play that game. But I think actually finally some gay men, especially gay white men, because now they're fully thought of as the enemy. I mean, I've even seen things on college campuses where LGBT organizations are saying, well, you can't be a gay white man and be the president of the organization because you're one of the bad guys. I mean, That's really dangerous thinking.
Well, I saw what you had to deal with too with that professor who said that the LGBT community doesn't want you at the, was it the University of New Hampshire?
University of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Do you know that? So I didn't know at the time. So I think much of my audience will know what you're referring to. But I spoke at University of New Hampshire, and there were all these hecklers there, and there was a trans woman who I did not know was a professor. I didn't know that until literally 2 months later, who was screaming at me how much I hate trans people and all this, and I kept saying, I want you to have equality under the law, and I want you to be treated with decency and respect, and I hope you find someone that loves you, and all of the things I would want for anyone else. I just don't want the government dictating what pronouns I can use to refer to you. And, you know, basically she was calling me alt-right and all that. And of course, it turns out she's a gender studies professor.
Yeah, it should never be a surprise anymore.
But there's going to be no discipline at the school or anything like that. I mean, I could probably make more of a hay of it and see what happens, but it's like...
Yeah, you know, you handled it amazingly well. And
thanks.
I mean, it's only a matter of time. Like, I see with feminism, they're turning on white women now, too. So it's insane.
Is that the only logical outcome of these disciplines? Because they are not held to the scientific standard of everything else that we discussed here in the first half? That you are held to as a scientist?
Yeah. I think because everything is, there's so much based in subjective feeling and validating people's experiences, you apparently can't question someone's experience. So if someone's offended or they don't like you, what can you say? So I could see that, and it's very much rewarding people for being emotionally driven instead of, I think the best way to have a debate is to remove emotion and just try to look at the facts as objectively as you can, no matter what the issue is. So it's that they don't really have any sort of method to how they do even their research. It's kind of a joke. Yeah,
but aren't we kind of hearing that even the methods now are part of the patriarchy and all of those things? That,
objectivity.
You know, you're using facts. They don't want facts to actually count because they believe in this postmodern drivel that facts have been arrived to by mechanisms that they don't believe in. That's a tough thing to trick somebody out of.
Yeah, but you know, I think on some level, I think some of these scholars know that what they're doing is very lucrative, and so they're just basically trying to shut people down in any way they can. They can't really justify it, but you know, they just keep screaming about it. And academics who have better things to do, like actually do real research, and they've got their courses and their students and a million other things and their 80-hour work weeks, they don't have time to deal with this. So this is why there's such a lopsided discourse in terms of what you see coming out of the universities. And there are some institutions that, you know, they won't allow academics to engage with the media without permission first. So that's part of it too. It's really an unfair battle right now that's being fought.
Yeah. How do you think we get to a place where specifically related to sexuality and topics related to gender and sex, where we will be able to talk about it in a better way? So, for example, the Me Too movement, where everybody, I think basically thinking person understands that there were some really bad people here that did some really bad stuff. Obviously, Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and some people that really that drugged people and had, you know, years of history of doing all this. And then there's all sorts of other people who seem like they're just getting swept up in it or baselessly accused or all that. Now, you can be for the idea of the Me Too movement without being for taking down all of these other people, or also, and I guess what the real issue is litigating everyone's history, where we could all look back and go, oh, I did this, someone did that to me, this, that, the other thing. College kids now having to sign things before they hook up. I mean, really, where we're creating this situation where our interpersonal relations are going to have almost nothing to do with the stuff that's hardwired into us, the stuff that you study.
I think Me Too probably started as something honorable, and I do agree that women and men have been dealing with harassment for far too long, and that it doesn't get taken seriously sometimes. But it's to the point now where relations are so strained, especially between men and women. I sense men are terrified, and that's not going to be helpful across the board for anybody. I think especially when you look at shades of gray, well, I mean, there's so much I could say on this.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think what the best place to start would be. With consent, say, I think one message that's been missing is women. I've written about this. Women need to advocate for themselves. And that's not to say if you are experienced harassment or if you were assaulted that you are at fault. I'm not advocating victim blaming, but I think what's missing from this narrative, women are portrayed as though they're helpless, and if something happens to them, they're helpless, and that they're basically, they have no say in terms of how men behave towards them. And I've written about sexism in the sciences and how women are basically being scared off, I think, of going into the field. As someone with a PhD in a science field, yeah, you deal with sexism and it's unpleasant, but I still got my degree and now I'm speaking out about it. So if you want to achieve something, you can. And sexism is not so terrible in the world that women can't achieve what they want. So going back to consent, I think women need, young women especially, need to be told, you have a say in this. If you don't like something or if you don't want to do something, say so. Don't feel like it's on the man to, I don't know, read your mind. And I feel like I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this, but I think that empowers women instead of telling them, just really hope that this doesn't happen to you. And if it does, then get on Twitter and use the hashtag and talk about how men are terrible and men are trash. Men are not terrible. There are lovely men in the world. I love men. There are some bad men, but you can't generalize to all men.
Yeah, but we love the generalization thing right
it's
now,
easier.
right? I mean, you even see this, the amount of articles where I see, we have to take down it's always white men that we have to take down, or now it's women's turn to rule the world, or all of these things, and it's like, well, a woman could be president, or a woman could be, anything that a man could be, but it shouldn't be because she's a woman. It should be because she's qualified,
capable,
capable. But we've seen this sort of hysterical reaction to it, and I think that now is just another one of these places where we're on this crazy pendulum, just bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to come back to the middle, and hopefully not too much damage will be done before that happens, and that the relations between men and women aren't going to be so terribly strained. I do think we're reaching that point, though, because there are only so many men left who haven't been accused of a Me Too moment. So, it's only a matter of time.
It's interesting. I have a running joke with some of my friends that I know a lot of great straight girls in LA that are single. A lot of straight great girls. I don't know a lot of straight guys that I think are great. Like I know some straight guys that are kind of whatever, but I don't know like a lot of straight guys that kind of have their shit together. That are, so I have all these girls that are like, oh, can't you set me up with a guy? And I'm like, not the guys I know, which does show that there's sort of a crisis, I think, in masculinity or something. And obviously Jordan Peterson is addressing this at some level, although now I've spent so much time with him, I think he's addressing it in a certain way almost equally for men and women, although people only focus on the male part. But do you know, is anyone doing research on sort of what is happening to young men in particular right now?
That's a good question. I know that levels of testosterone are lower on average more recently, so I don't know if that has something to do with it.
Do we know what the reasoning for that is?
Could be maybe there's more estrogens that we're putting into our bodies. Trying to think of what I can give you, because that's an interesting. So how old are your friends? I'm curious.
This sort of set of friends that I'm talking about, these girls usually are in their sort of like early 30s. Yeah. Kind of thing. And they're single, which, most often cases, a lot of them, their friends are married already. And like they're on the hunt, and they've got good jobs, and they look good, and they take care of themselves, and all of those things. And I just don't see the equivalent here. I don't know. Maybe there's an odd subset of, because LA is like a little bit of an odd place. Maybe there's more gay people here. I don't know exactly. Yeah, I mean, I could see the average age for people getting married is 28. So I don't want to generalize and say that across the board. I know you want to use science. In fact, it's incredible. I want to be fair. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it could be that for guys who are a certain age, there's a reason, but the same thing for women of a certain age, and not to say that your friends, of course, but if you're focused on your career, maybe you're not used to giving your time to someone else, that could be part of it. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that the feminist movement, which I know we've sort of ancillary been talking about it this whole time, that they really did give up something very special by putting so much focus on work and success in that way? I mean, I think back to my childhood now, which I think, in retrospect, was so amazing. My mom was home for most of it. She worked before, I'm the oldest of three, she worked before I was there, and then she didn't work all the years that she was raising us, and then went back to work after. And that having someone at home that was cooking and taking care of us and making sure we got to school and all of those things, like, that's like the greatest thing that anyone could do. It happens to more often be the woman, but that's a pretty great thing. That's often been sacrificed. Now we're thought of, it's mocked in a way now.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been atypical in terms of I've always felt more masculine. I've always been very focused on my career, but I definitely think that feminism, for some people or some proponents of feminism, they will denigrate female typical roles in motherhood and wanting to be, at home with your family. And I think, I've heard from women who say, I've been told that the path to happiness is for me to focus on my career and to neglect my personal life, and then they reach a point where they realize, no, I do want those things, and I don't think there should be anything wrong with that. And the same thing, I've written about how there's such an emphasis for girls to be like boys now. I saw you tweet about babies.
Yeah, babies.
And underlying that is a sexism that says that girls need to be like boys in order to be equal or worthy of respect. And no one's talking about that. Where people are just saying, yeah, for sure, let's just, tell girls that they have to be the same as boys and women have to be the same as men. Yeah,
so the article you're referring to, there was this piece, I think it was in Newsweek, that these parents are raising their twins as babies, T-H-E-Y, babies, and they're going to let them pick their gender. And it's like, you're going to create more psychological problems than you were trying to hide them from, most likely, I think.
Yeah, and it goes back to biology again and hormonal exposure in utero. I think it's great that
it might have been NBC News, I think, not maybe
okay,
not Newsweek. Okay.
Yeah, but I think there were a couple outlets that were so excited about this, and the whole.
Well, that was why I wrote about it, not because of the thing. These parents can do whatever they want, and that's what I followed up with immediately after. The parents can do whatever they want, and then when the children are of age, they can either decide my parents were crazy or not, and
disown them.
Yeah, no, right, disown the parents, right, and all that. But that wasn't the issue for me. It was that the way these headlines are always written, it's like that it was like this is the new thing. And the implicit piece of that is you better do this to be a good parent, to be a tolerant parent, to be a progressive parent. And that's an open-minded person. And that to me is the danger here. Not the little isolated case necessarily of these people that are doing something that's an outlier thing. Yeah,
and the thing is, I've heard stories now where people are terrified of giving their daughters dolls, and what's really funny is you have some of these really progressive parents who raise their girls, they only have gender-neutral toys or they give them boys' toys, and then the girl obviously goes to school and sees girl typical toys and wants to play with them, and the parents are horrified and they think, oh, this is the patriarchy coming in.
The return of the patriarchy.
It's just biology, and we shouldn't be afraid of that, and we shouldn't shame girls for wanting to be female typical.
Yeah, but this is why when people say, I think, to a bunch of us that are in this space, this, oh, you guys are overstating what this thing is. It's just a bunch of angry activists or whatever. It's like we've seen it infect academia, which you've addressed already. We've seen it infect the home and how you're supposed to raise your kids. Even just thinking about this now, it's like, I think I read something on this, and if not, there's definite proof of it, that Disney made a decision along the way, now that they have Star Wars and Marvel, that Star Wars was going to be more marketed to girls and Marvel was going to be the boys thing. Now I'm a big Star Wars guy, and I would see these commercials and it was all girls in the ships and girls with the lightsabers, all that. I have no problem with that, obviously. Rey, the leading character in the last one, is a girl. It's all good. The girls can do whatever they want, but pushing marketing on them seems odd to me. And although I'm sure there are many girls out there that want to be Jedi, there's obviously more boys. So the way that we even market, and I suspect they're marketing in a way that's hurting their bottom line in the name of tolerance? In the name of what? I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, how did the boys feel about that?
Right, and then so you're going to get this odd thing then when eventually, after enough marketing, boys are going to want to play with the girl thing and then feel weird about it. God, that's messed up.
Too much time. These people have too much time on their hands, yeah. I just say let kids do what they want and acknowledge that as long as you give them free choices, you probably won't have too much say at the end of the day, but at least, they'll be happy.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you're researching at the moment or that's been on your mind that we haven't covered specifically?
The only thing I would say is, so with Wrong Speak, we are going to be launching we just launched our first season last month. So we spoke with James Damore, Lindsay Shepard. We also did an episode on rapid onset gender dysphoria. So it's this phenomenon of adolescent girls who are suddenly saying they're transgender even though they've had no previous signs of gender dysphoria. And actually their problems have nothing to do with gender.
So what are the problems? That's just societal stuff, or pressure, or wanting attention, or
all of the above. Usually autism as well.
Really?
So they either will be diagnosed by a mental health professional, but the person will say, I can't say that, I have to, affirm your child's gender, because they can otherwise get into a lot of trouble and lose their jobs if they don't.
Wait. Can you repeat that? I got to get that one right.
So that they will lose their jobs if they don't?
No, but they have to affirm they can't affirm
they have to. Clinicians nowadays have to affirm these kids. If a child says they're transgender, you have to. They'll lose their jobs otherwise.
So technically a therapist or a clinician could feel that this is some other issue going on or something, but they have to actually affirm what the child says to the parents and in all the documents, because they will lose their jobs.
They're terrified. And so in Toronto, what happened, what the Preston case was, my colleague Kenneth Zucker, he had a clinic where he saw gender dysphoric children, and people said that he was practicing conversion therapy. He was not. So conversion therapy, I do not stand for. It's trying to turn gay children straight. But sexual orientation is not the same thing as gender. So gender in young children is flexible, and it becomes more stable with age. So when patients would come to him and say, I want to be the opposite sex, he would say, okay, what's the underlying...
Wait, let me just pause you for a second. When you say gender is flexible, you don't mean the amount of genders, you mean the feelings that you have related to genders. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, no, there are two genders. Let's be clear. Yeah, binary, very binary, not a spectrum.
People will jump on that, okay.
Yeah. So if you have, the example I've been using, if you have a little boy who says he's a girl, he will likely be a gay man, and he will likely grow to be comfortable in his male gender identity. So for 99% of us, our biological sex is our gender.
Man, this thing, it's a real monster.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So anyway, what I was saying with my colleague, his clinic got shut down. He wasn't doing anything unethical, but because of that, it's set this chill across the field now. Clinicians do not want to have the same thing happen to them, because activists will go after them.
Yeah, so there's no one really practicing or anyone sort of thought of as legitimate that's practicing conversion therapy anymore, is there?
I hope not. I hope not.
And all the science is against it, like that it just never worked? Like it was just something that, I guess, a sort of twisted ideologue was practicing, not using real evidence or science, and eventually it just fizzled out, basically.
Yeah, I do think there are some practitioners who are still doing it. I wouldn't call them legitimate, which it makes me very uncomfortable when I see that. But yeah, definitely sexual orientation is biological, it's genetic, and it can't be changed. So conversion therapy is completely useless. Yeah,
well, I'm glad we got there at least. I think most people won't be angry at you on that one. Well, I guess maybe some people on the right might be angry on that one.
Maybe, but I'm all about presenting the data and speaking to facts and the science and standing up for sex research, whether it infuriates people on the left or the right.
Yeah, science, facts, reason, pretty much all, but all sort of packaged within the free speech thing.
Yeah.
Can I call you a member of the intellectual dark web?
Please do.
I don't know that I have that power, but I'm going to go to the clubhouse later. And
okay,
I'm gonna,
get me a membership?
Yeah, we have to vote on it. It's a weird thing, and
I can be a white man some days.
Yeah. Oh, right, that was the thing. It was like, whatever, all these idiots that are writing all these nonsensical pieces about it, it's all white men, and it's like, come on.
There are a bunch of us that are not white. But I mean, I've been called a white supremacist, I've been called a Nazi, so, that's the level that we're at right now, and they have nothing else, so I think it's a good sign.
In a weird way, it absolutely is a good sign. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm so glad that we finally got to do this.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah, we will do, I sense these issues are not going away, so we're going to have to do this again. All right, very good. For more on Debra, you can follow her on Twitter. It's @Debra Soh.